Do you have a golf fan in the family? Well, they will love this clock. This is a fully 3D printed golf clock. Every time the hour changes, it loads a ball, lines up the shot, and sinks the putt. All driven by servos, an ESP controller, and a bit of clever code. In this video, I'll show you how it works from the inside out. The mechanics, the electronics, the hacks. We'll look at the internal mechanisms, the servo control, and how everything comes together into a finished working project you can build yourself. Let's get started. As with our past projects, we first need to work out the best controller for the job. Any of these could technically run the project, but we want to be able to configure the clock over Wi-Fi, so we don't need to add buttons or switches. That immediately rules out standard Arduinos. Unless we add a separate Wi-Fi module, that leaves us with the ESP8266, the ESP32, some of the smaller ESP variants, and the Pico. The first version of this clock actually used a Pico, but this time, we want to keep things as small as possible. So we'll rule that out along with the ESP8266 and the larger ESP32 boards. That leaves us with the ESP32-S3 and the ESP32-C3. The S3 is better than the C3 in almost every way except for cost and possibly power consumption. Since what we're doing here isn't very processing heavy, using an S3 would be a bit of a waste, so we'll go with the C3. This project requires servos, and it's not very easy to plug a servo directly into the controller. I found this nifty breakout board that lets us plug everything in easily without soldering or chopping wires. We do have to hack it slightly, but we'll go over that a bit later. The ESP just sits on top of the board. It also has a JST connector for a battery, but for now we'll assume this clock will always be mains powered. As far as servos go, they come in all shapes and sizes. These are probably the ones you recognize the most, and let's take a look at how they work. Here's a typical SG90 servo. Once we take the cover off, there isn't too much going on inside the motor, and this critical part called a potentiometer, which keeps track of the servo's position. And the circuit board at the bottom receives a signal, and the servo moves to the requested angle. So how does that actually work? We send a series of pulses to the servo, and the length of each pulse determines the angle the servo will move to. Because of this, servos have 3 wires: power, ground, and signal. It's important to understand that this is what's known as a closed loop system. We tell the servo where to go, but we don't get any direct feedback confirming that it actually got there. Let's go over how we're going to use the servos. Here's our model just quickly, and don't worry about these triangular bits on the sides. We'll cover those later. A few people have asked whether I'm using magnets or something similar to guide the ball. As you can see here, it's actually shaped like a funnel, although this will be much less obvious once we apply a little trick later on. If we remove the green parts, we can see the servos underneath. What's basically happening is the ball will roll down this ramp into what I'll call a silo, for lack of a better term. Inside the silo, there's a piston that catches the ball. Servo 1 uses a fork mechanism to lift the ball up to the T position. Servo 2 is then responsible for rotating the player so they can hit the ball. Now that we understand how it works, let's get these servos in place. Here's the base as we saw in the model. It's slightly different from the version I'm releasing, but it's essentially the same. The first servo we want to install is Servo 2, the swing servo. You'll want to feed the wire from the top and then back up through the gap. It's a bit fiddly, but it should go through. The screw holes on these servos are extremely small, so I've had to use 2mm screws and nuts. If you look on the side here, you'll see a slot for the nut. Just run the screw from the top on both sides of the servo to keep it in place. Once that's done, we can add Servo 1. This is our elevator. On either side, there's another long 2mm screw. You might want to use some thread locking compound as these screws tend to come loose fairly often. Don't attach anything to the servos just yet. Now that the servos are in place, we can add the ramp. There's a slot here for a sensor. You'll want to put something reflective there, like paper. I've used foil tape. This is for an infrared sensor, which triggers our motion when the light is interrupted by the ball. And we probably don't strictly need this sensor, but it's useful to know the ball has made it to the silo, so we aren't wasting energy lifting for nothing. It's also super handy during testing. With that done, let's get our controller sorted out. I mentioned earlier that we were going to use this breakout board to make life easier for us, so let's take a closer look. The servos require 5 volts to operate, but at the moment this breakout board only provides 3.3 volts through these links at the bottom. Each link has 2 positions, 3.3 volts or BAT. If we move the link over to BAT, the power from the battery is supplied to the power pins. Even then, that still wouldn't be enough. So what we're going to do instead is remove the link altogether. This effectively removes all power from those pins. We can then run a jumper from the 5 volts supplied by the USB to that power rail, giving us a proper 5 volt supply for the servos. The servos might work on 3.3 volts or battery voltage, but we know they work reliably at 5 volts, hence the hack. The links are labeled VCC1 and VCC2, one for each side of the board. We only want to remove the VCC2 link. Using a soldering iron, just heat it up and chip it off. VCC1 will still power our sensor, and that needs to remain at 3.3 volts. Let's get into wiring this thing up. We've got our servos and sensor installed, along with the modified breakout board, and we also have our controller. Now let's look at the code to see what connects where. At the top of the code, we define which pins we're using on the ESP. In this case, we're using pins 6 and 7 for the servos, and pin 0 for the sensor. If you flip the board over, you can see the pin numbers printed on the bottom. We just need to line those up with the sockets on the breakout board. Next, add the servos. The signal wire, orange, connects to the yellow pin on the board. Don't forget to add the power jumper we talked about earlier, so the servos actually get their 5 volt supply. Finally, we add the sensor. This is a pretty common key style sensor, but always check the markings on your specific board. It simply slots into the connector at the back. Now back to the code, and this is why we didn't attach any servo arms yet. When the code first runs, it homes all the servos to 90 degrees. Hopefully when you power everything on, you'll see all the servos make a quick movement as they home into position. All servos generally come with a servo horn. This is the arm that fits onto the servo shaft and is secured with a screw. One of the provided STLs is a fork that mounts onto this horn. We're aiming to use the middle hole, slot the fork on with the correct orientation, and screw it in place. Once that's done, place the horn onto the lift servo so the fork is at the absolute bottom. This will be our home position. Then secure it with the screw. Next, grab the piston. You'll notice this slight chamfer on one side that needs to face toward the ramp. This helps prevent the ball from jamming. Slide the piston into the silo, then insert the pin through the fork to hold it in place. You can now remove the horn from the swing servo. The player figure has a hole in the bottom that should match the servo shaft, along with a hole for the retaining screw, but we don't want to install the player just yet. Once everything is powered up, you should see a red light on the sensor, and that tells us it's detecting a reflection. Next to the LED is a small potentiometer to adjust sensitivity. It's not in a great spot, but I found you can gently nudge it around the edge using a small screwed driver. If you swipe past the sensor quickly, it should trigger the motion in test mode, and that horrible noise you might hear is the servo traveling too far. Something we'll adjust later. As far as the electronics and wiring go, we're all the way there. Now it's just a matter of testing whether our player can actually sink a ball. A critical part of making sure this works is keeping the unit level. We're relying on the shape of the green to guide the ball into the hole, and on the ramp having a steep enough angle to roll the ball back into the silo. To do this, we add these screw-on feet, which let you adjust the height depending on the surface you're using. Just screw them into the base of the chassis. Next up is placing the green into the frame. It's a bit of a fiddly fit, but start with one corner and twist it into place. Once it's seated, it should fit snugly on the chassis. There are screw holes at either end to hold it in place. Add a couple of screws for testing. Now we can add our player. The home position is just to the left of the hole where the ball is raised, so screw him down so he doesn't pop off during operation. Now we're in a state where we can start testing, but first we need to make a few adjustments to the code. We want the clock to chime at the top of the hour, but the controller has no idea what the current time is. To solve that, we use a time server. This is a server on the internet that simply tells us the current time. The ESP checks this and triggers the chime at the top of each hour. For this to work, you'll need to add your local network credentials to the code. I'm not going to cover how to program an ESP in this video. That's already well documented elsewhere. Check out my guide if you need a good tutorial. Once those changes are made, program the ESP. You'll need to know the IP address assigned to it. If you're connected to the Arduino serial console, this will be printed there. Otherwise, check your router's DHCP client list to find it. Once you have the IP address, enter it into a web browser to bring up the web interface. This gives us access to all the servo settings. Here we can see we've fixed the noise from earlier by reducing the maximum angle. We can also adjust the speed if it's too fast. The ball can literally get thrown into the air. We can tweak how far back the player pulls, how far forward they swing, and the overall speed of the motion. There's also a ball status indicator and some debug information. We can run a test cycle to really dial in the swing. If you run a test and the ball doesn't return, you'll see a warning here, and the system won't run again until the issue is resolved. Just refresh the status to check again, and that's exactly why we added the sensor. Okay, so we're just about ready for full assembly, but before we do that, I want to talk about this little guy here. He's actually quite hard to print on an FDM printer. If you have access to a resin printer, I definitely recommend using that. I got the best results printing him upside down at a 0.1 millimeter layer height on an Ender 3 V2. I also have a Creality high printer, and honestly, it doesn't really stand a chance with something this detailed. The shaft is a brass rod. What I do is print the putting part up to the second to last layer, then insert the bent brass rod into the club and continue the print to seal it in place. The hole at the bottom can be a bit tight. I just hit it briefly with a heat gun and push it onto the servo shaft. The same goes for the arm angles. They might not be quite right out of the printer. Again, a quick blast with a heat gun lets you adjust them. You want to make sure the club only hits the ball and not the green. Speaking of the green, hopefully the camera picks this up, but it has a textured surface. We did that using a slicer feature called fuzzy edges. This gives a nice grass-like effect, but it does mean the part has to be printed vertically. Earlier I mentioned the weird triangular bits around the edge of the green. Those are just there to help with printing. Once the job is finished, you can simply snap them off on both sides. For the back plane, we'll just print some scenery, maybe someone's name if this is a gift. I'm using a cheap clock mechanism from AliExpress. It's a simple press fit, so it's easy to swap out if needed. My first version actually used a TFT screen, but that's a lot to take on if you're just getting started. Honestly, I think this looks just as good. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a TFT version. Back to this guy, when it comes to finishing him, I recommend using acrylic pens. They have a fine brush tip on one end and make it really easy to build up the paint in layers. So just give him a solid, even coat and get as close as you can. He'll end up with a slightly matte finish at first, but here's the trick. Hit him with a couple of coats of clear gloss. At that point you'd swear he was injection molded plastic, and with that the project is complete. The background image here is just off an inkjet printer on plain paper. Something like photo paper would probably look a bit better. Hopefully you've learned something about servos today, along with a few coding basics. If you've made it this far, you should totally subscribe. All the STL files you need to print this, the shopping list, and the code itself will be available on my Patreon. Check the show notes. Thanks for watching.